The Rolls Royce Ghost was first launched in 2009 and quickly became the brand's best-selling vehicle ever. Slightly smaller than the Phantom and coming in at a slightly lower price point, it expanded the reach of the brand to new clients who were younger and more inclined to drive the cars themselves. So of course they would build upon the success of the first generation Ghost and bring us a new generation. The only things that this new Ghost shares with the previous generation are the Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament and the umbrellas in the doors. Everything else is completely new, designed and engineered from the ground up. In terms of the powertrain, as befits a Rolls Royce, we have a 6.75-liter twin-turbo V12 that makes 563 horsepower and 623 pound-feet of torque. It is also now all-wheel drive, whereas the first-generation Ghost and all the iterations on that platform were rear-wheel drive only. It now also has rear-wheel steering. 0 to 60 happens in 4.6 seconds, which is quite impressive for a big, heavy luxury sedan that weighs over 5,600 pounds. In terms of the platform, the Ghost also no longer shares anything with the BMW 7 Series. Instead, this new generation Ghost is built on Rolls-Royce's own platform, known as the Architecture of Luxury. In terms of exterior styling, the Ghost is unmistakably a Rolls Royce. You have all the signature cues, including the Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament up front and the imposing Pantheon grille, which for this generation features downlit illumination. But they made it the subtle, classy illumination. When they're developing it, they discovered it was a little too bright and shiny. So these bars in the grille are actually polished on one side, but matte finish on the other side to give it a more subtle illumination effect at night. And of course, you have the double RR logo right up front. Again, just unmistakably a Rolls Royce. And while this is the smaller sedan in the lineup, it is still an absolute behemoth. And this one here is the regular wheelbase version. There is an extended wheelbase Ghost that adds over 6 inches of length to the rear doors here to add extra rear seat space. And of course, we have the rear hinged coach doors out back, conventional doors up front, and there are power opening and power closing doors. You simply press this button here on the door handle and the doors will close themselves. Other typical Rolls-Royce cues include the floating center caps where the logo always stays upright, and never ever try to steal the Spirit of Ecstasy because it will retract on its own. While many owners may prefer to drive the car themselves, the rear seats are still incredibly impressive. We have a button here that allows me to auto close the rear doors. And then we have these fold-out tray tables with a big display screen. Allows me to see all sorts of vehicle information, navigation. You can control it here with another rotary dial. And then we have the refrigerator in the middle to cool our champagne. Of course, we have the Starlight headliner. And when we want to exit, I simply fold up this rear tray table, which is all power, of course. And you just pull the door handle once, the door opens slightly, and then you pull and hold it, and it power opens on its own. With that, let's go hop in the driver's seat, take the Ghost for a drive, and keep talking about what it's like to drive, the technology, and the luxury. All right, the start-stop button is here on the left. Fire up that 6.75-liter twin-turbo V12, and to close the front doors, we have these toggles here in the middle. Power closes our front doors. Our transmission selector stalk is here on the steering column, and away we go. Driving a Rolls Royce is one of the most serene and calming and smooth experiences you can have in a vehicle. It is just utterly, completely isolated from the entire world, right? You don't have wind noise, you don't have road noise, you barely even hear that twin-turbo V12. And they did a lot to make sure this is the smoothest possible experience. So the new generation of the Ghost has something they call planar suspension, and it's all these components that come together to give it the magic carpet ride. So we have the world's first upper wishbone dampers. We can actually see when you look into the wheel well. You have obviously the self-leveling air suspension, the continuous continuously adjusting dampers, and everything is to try to keep the vehicle as level as possible. You have something called the flag bearer system, which uses 2 cameras to scan the road ahead of you at speeds up to 100 kilometers an hour, so 62 miles an hour. It'll pre-adjust the suspension to ensure you have the most isolated and comfortable ride ever. And it all comes together to make this thing just utterly waft along the road. You feel like you might as well be in a yacht just cruising along, or a private jet experience. It is truly remarkable, and it's so quiet. In fact, when they were first developing it, it was too quiet. It was essentially silent, and that was disorienting to people in the vehicle. So they had to engineer in a little bit of noise. They call it a whisper, and it's this harmonized sound to ensure everything was in harmony, right? The examples that they gave, apparently during development, some of the pre-production vehicles, the seat frame was resonating at a different frequency from the rest of the body of the vehicle, so they developed a special damper to ensure that everything was in harmony. It's details like that are just absolutely unbelievable. There is over 100 kilograms of sound deadening in the Rolls Royce Ghost. In the doors, the double glazed glass, the frame, the roof, the tires, all to make this as isolated and quiet as possible. And it's just unparalleled. So other executive luxury sedans in the level of like my former Audi A8L, a Mercedes S-Class, a BMW 7 Series, they're also very quiet and isolated from the rest of the world. But this is another level. When you close the doors on a Rolls Royce, it's just silence. You are sealed away from the world. And then you go for a drive. So we talked a bit about the suspension system, how well isolated it is, and I keep saying how these were designed more for owners who want to drive their cars. Phantom owners, they're usually driven in the back. Those things are absolutely massive. But when the Ghost, the Wraith, and the Dawn came out, these owners were more inclined to be the driver themselves. So some of the dynamics had to come into play. This is by no means a sports sedan whatsoever, right? It's not like an S63 AMG type of experience, but it has a 50-50 weight distribution, and I'm honestly quite surprised how well it handles its size, mass, weight, everything in the curvy canyon roads, right? You're wafting along, but steering inputs are very precise. Like, it's just perfectly weighted. And the rear steer makes it actually feel nice and maneuverable. Like, you just waft through the canyons, and I was honestly really, really impressed at how this handles its size and weight. Never gonna feel sporty at all. If you want that, they have the black badge, and the black badge adds a little bit more power. It retunes the suspensions a little firmer and the steering feel, but to me, that doesn't seem to be the point. I want a Rolls Royce for, again, that wafting silent cocoon of relaxation. I don't need it to be a sporty, well-handling sedan. That's just not the point. I'd buy a sports car, a supercar for that. But the black badge exists for those who want that more sporty touch. Obviously, it darkens out the trim. You get a little bit more power, and it may handle a little bit better. But honestly, in regular guys, this Ghost, properly impressive with how it drives. The luxuries on the inside are just staggering, the details. So materials obviously are going to be the absolute top tier. The amount of leather inside a Rolls Royce Ghost is staggering. There's something like 338 individual leather-covered panels, and you know it's all going to be the best of the best leather. There are 10 cows worth of leather inside the Rolls Royce Ghost. 20 half hides is what they quote. So 10 cows made the ultimate sacrifice to line the interior of the Rolls Royce Ghost, and I thank them for it because it is just sumptuous. There's no other way to describe it. And the other amazing thing in a Rolls Royce is, if it looks like metal, it's metal. If it looks like wood, it'll be wood. If it looks like leather, it's leather. There's nothing fake, right? And like the craftsmanship, the quality, the weight, just even these air vents, these are all metal. They feel so solid. Can you hear that? And they're just cold to the touch, and the resistance, same thing with these like plungers for opening and closing the air vents. It's just done so nicely, and the fun little details. And a Rolls Royce, your airspeed, it's not numbers, right? That'd be uncivilized. I could have my air either off, soft, medium, high, or max. I'm currently having some soft air blown at me, and that's the appropriate amount. Got my heated, cooled seats. Actually, I'm gonna turn on my massage seats, which of course the Ghost has. We have the bespoke audio system, which is an 18-speaker, 1,300-watt sound system that actually uses the body of the car as like a resonance chamber, essentially turning the whole thing into a big subwoofer. The clarity and the sound quality is definitely fantastic. And then we get to some of the other unique details that no other manufacturer, let alone any luxury car manufacturer, has. So you've seen Starlight headliner. It's obviously amazing, but the customizability is like essentially endless. Their Shooting Star headliner, this one just has the regular Starlight headliner. Shooting Star is fun because you sit here and you just randomly watch a shooting star go across the headliner, which is just mesmerizing at night. But you can set the star positioning to match the constellations in the sky for a specific date, a location. You can have different designs put up there. You can have your coat of arms. You can have whatever you want on the Starlight headliner. The customization is whatever you want. It's all done by hand too. That's not a machine. These vehicles are still put together by expert craftsmen. These are like pieces of art. These literally are pieces of art. And then we get to the illuminated fascia on the Ghost, which is there on the passenger side of the dashboard. And while it may look very simple, just a bunch of scattered little light points in the Ghost lettering, it is anything but simple. It is truly, truly remarkable. It took over 2 years and over 10,000 hours to develop that. That's over 850 little stars, which emulates the Starlight headliner, which is a signature Rolls Royce Q now. And the Ghost lettering is not just simple outline. It's a 2mm thick lighting guide that's composed of over 90,000 laser drilled holes to give it like a sparkle effect. And it is truly, truly remarkable to see that at night. And speaking of bespoke customizability, I have a friend who, on his Ghost, he changed the lettering to say Dream. Still has the 850 stars there, but he was able to change the lettering. And take a guess how much that bespoke option cost him. Whatever number you guessed, it probably wasn't high enough. It was $41,200 to get that option. But talk about customizability. One of one, never been done before. Such a cool touch. So that is just illustrates how amazing the Rolls Royce experience can be. The seats are obviously extremely comfortable. Actually, the headrests in the back are more squishy and comfortable than the headrests up front. You have this very large diameter steering wheel. It really is like reminiscent of like steering a boat or something, right? This thin spoke around the outside, but then you have these thicker spokes here with the buttons on it. We have concessions to modern technology, but it's integrated in a tasteful way. It can't be over the top, right? You wouldn't want a Rolls Royce just covered in touchscreens everywhere. You have an infotainment screen here in the middle. It is a reskinned BMW iDrive system, a 10.25-inch touchscreen. I've got wireless CarPlay running, got Android Auto, and it works very, very well, easy to use. And you have a digital cluster here for your speedometer, your fuel gauge, and so forth. But it's like, has these metal rings around the outside to make it look as if it's still somewhat analog. And then we have one of my favorite things in a Rolls Royce, which is the leftmost gauge, the power reserve dial, right? You don't have a tachometer in a Rolls Royce. You're not supposed to be bothered with wondering what speed your engine is spinning at. You don't even know what gear your transmission is in. You simply have this power reserve gauge that goes from 100% to 0, and it tells you what percentage of power is remaining. Just cruising around, I'm using between 10 to 15%, so I've got 85-90% power remaining, and if you floor it, it quickly spins over to the left and you unleash that massive tsunami, that mountain of torque. Peak torque is available starting at 1,600 RPM. That is so low, and that's the nature of the Rolls-Royce driving experience. It's smooth, right? There's like this moment of hesitation when you first leave a red light, right? Leave a standstill, and it just builds in this linear cresting wave, and you just waft your way along. It does not encourage aggressive driving, sporty driving. It just simply can handle itself in all scenarios. And I still have to come back to that suspension. The planar suspension is just utterly amazing. A step up from the previous generation. This has got to be the most composed, quiet, smooth, serene car I've ever been in. There's videos that were demonstrating when this Ghost generation first launched, going over uneven bumps and how the body just stayed perfectly level as the wheels were, and the suspension was articulating up and down. Everything in an effort to keep the occupants completely isolated from the rest of the world. I had this parked on a kind of inclined driveway earlier in the week, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, look at the wheel gaps. They're like all over the place, but the body was level. So it had simply adjusted itself to, again, keep the body as level as possible, even when parked stationary. And the wheel gaps are totally different because the suspension has set itself to different points in order to keep this as leveled as possible. I could just go on and on to just talk about the amazing technology and luxury that goes into the Ghost to make it unmatched, unparalleled. Which takes us to a discussion about value. The price point of a Rolls Royce Ghost, while is the most entry level in the Rolls Royce lineup, it's still a lot of money. I'm essentially driving a nice house with a twin turbo V12, right? It starts in the $300,000 range, $330,000, and you easily option it into the $430,000 price point. And you can do the extended wheelbase, you can do the black badge, which makes the Ghost even more expensive. The one that my friend owned that I mentioned with the Dream lettering, his was an extended wheelbase option to $540,000. But when you look at the rest of the Rolls-Royce lineup, the Ghost is the value proposition. The Cullinan starts in the 400s-ish range. The Phantom is just an even more staggering amount expensive. It's essentially $500,000. The extended wheelbase Phantom is like $570,000, and when you option those up, they are $600,000 to $700,000 vehicles. The Spectre, the new all-electric Rolls-Royce coupe, those are all, from what I've seen, $500,000. So the Ghost, starting at $330,000, is the value proposition in the lineup. But then we look at some competitors. So the Bentley Continental Flying Spur comes to mind, the big four-door Bentley. That starts in the 200s range, but to get the W12, the 12-cylinder, you have to go closer to $300,000. And you can option those into the mid-$300,000 range. But what we're saying is the absolute top lineup of Bentley is just barely touching the bottom, the entry level of the Rolls-Royce lineup. The Mercedes Maybach, again, an amazing car, but half the price. So you can go, well, I'd rather have the Maybach, right? It costs half as much. It's going to be 85% of the experience. And that's the thing. With a car like this, it's not a rational one-to-one. There's no justification. The value proposition is essentially irrelevant to clients, people who commission a Rolls Royce. They don't care. They just want a Rolls Royce because it is just the top tier. Your Bentleys, your Maybachs, your whatever run-of-the-mill Mercedes, BMW 7 Series, they're ordinary in comparison. The Rolls Royce Spirit of Ecstasy, the grille, it just carries weight. And it's unmatched outside of like the top tier of supercars. And the respect that you get when driving one of these is hilarious. I like saying that. When you drive a Rolls Royce, you feel like somebody important even when you're not. I'm not important, but when I drive a Rolls Royce and I'm wafting along, cruising along with the Spirit of Ecstasy in front of me, it's just like all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, have I accomplished something in life? I'm in a Rolls Royce. I must have done something right. We went to this really nice country club type of place for dinner earlier in the week, and there's a gate with a guard. And my friend that I'm visiting here said, every single time the guard asks you, what are you here for? What brings you here? Do you have a dinner reservation? And he's like, I wonder if they're going to ask when we arrive in the Rolls Royce. Sure enough, we pull up to the gate, and as we're approaching, the gate's already on its way up. The guard did not ask anything. I rolled the window down, say, thank you very much. And he goes, of course, sir. And we just continue along, no questions asked. And it's just, I just thought it was a hilarious way of illustrating the perception of a Rolls Royce. The valet sprinted to the car to go park it. And again, we're on the Ghost. Imagine showing up in a Phantom. The Phantom is another level. Those things are literally the size of a small house. They are absolutely enormous. But I think in the current lineup, this is what I would buy. I have utterly fallen in love with driving the Ghost this week. Of course, how could I not, right? This is a $400,000-something car. Like, it is just utterly amazing. But I've just been so relaxed going everywhere. It is traffic in LA, not a problem, right? I'm sitting here listening to music on the amazing sound system, getting my massage. There's no outside noise really intruding in. It just, nothing bothers you. And I thought my Audi A8L was nice, right? I thought an S-Class was nice. They are. Don't get me wrong. They're amazing vehicles. And this is not 5 times better than a Audi A8. But again, that's not the point. you get diminishing returns when you get to this level of luxury, whether it's a car, whether it's fashion goods, whether it's watches, right? You can't rationally compare. But if you can experience it, if you can own one of these, they are just truly, truly amazing. It also leaves me with some thoughts about the Spectre. So I briefly drove the Spectre, and Rolls Royces are the perfect application of electrification. This twin-turbo V12 is so smooth and quiet. You just really aren't supposed to feel that it's there. It's just there to provide you a massive amount of torque and a smooth power delivery, right? Which sounds like EVs. Electric vehicles, by their nature, have tremendous low-end torque. They're very smooth, they're very quiet. So the Spectre was like the perfect application, and it was really, really impressive to drive. It's the Rolls Royce experience, just in EV. The interior feels really similar. I thought it was hilarious. In the Spectre, you have the same start engine stop button as you do in the Ghost. The Spectre is electric. There is no start engine, right? There's no engine, it just turns on and begins. So the only problem I see with the Spectre is going to be range and charging time, which the twin-turbo V12 does not have to deal with, but this does drink fuel. I mean, it's a big, heavy sedan, a lot of power, twin-turbo V12. I haven't been driving in the most efficient manner per se, averaging about 12 mpg. It's rated at 12 city, 19 highway, 14 combined, massive fuel tank. But if you buy one of these, you don't care, right? It doesn't matter, right? We're talking about the upper echelon of vehicle buyers. So final takeaways after spending time living with and driving the newest generation Rolls-Royce Ghost this week. I love it. Utterly phenomenal. This is the one I would buy if I was ordering a new Ghost. With all-wheel drive, rear-wheel steering, you have the day-to-day versatility, usability. I was shocked how well it handles, how well it drives. In these curvy canyon roads, like, it handles its mass so well. The planar suspension system, all the tech, the hardware and the software coming together to give this the most composed body control and ride I've felt in a luxury sedan like this, while not compromising the ride quality, right? Yeah, like a AMG S-Class is pretty sporty and performance-oriented too, but it won't waft like this. Waft is just the best word to describe driving the Ghost. How does it compare to the Cullinan, the Phantom? I've never been in a Phantom while it's moving, only sat in a Phantom stationary. Phantom is another tier. That is a private jet experience for the road. The Cullinan is also really nice, bigger, a little more presence and so forth, but higher center of gravity. I personally prefer the sedan experience, so I would go for this. But if you need a little more practicality, the Cullinan definitely is quite impressive in that regard. But this checks the box for every single thing I could possibly want in a luxury vehicle. I was trying to think of any complaints I could think of about this. The white interior is a little bit hard to keep clean, but that's because this one is optioned this way. Customizability, personalization is also seemingly endless. From exterior paint colors to contrast paint colors to trim finishing to the coach lines on the outside, colored leather inside, wood trim, the stitching embroidery, the customizability of the Starlight headliner, the different materials you can use. You can change the Spirit of Ecstasy, you can get the clock done in different materials. Like, it's literally whatever you would like, and it just depends on how much money you want to throw at your newly commissioned Rolls Royce. I am so happy to be the driver in the Ghost, right? I am happy to be in the back seat being driven. It is just a great experience in every regard. They did an amazing job with the second generation of the Ghost. If you've gotten tired of your Mercedes S-Class, your Maybach, or your Bentley Continental, and you want to step up, there's only one place to go: the Rolls Royce. And I think the Ghost is a pretty phenomenal place to start. I hope you enjoyed my review of the Rolls Royce Ghost. Make sure you also check out the Living With vlog, much more informal behind the scenes, coming along with me as I share just the day-to-day experience of living with a $400-something thousand Rolls Royce Ghost. What an utterly amazing experience. Thanks for watching.